Welcome to our viewers of our regular ear show called Let's Tell It Our Way, normally hosted by our brother in faith, Brother Raymond Johnstone, who at the moment is not here. So at any given point, he will be joining us. For today, we have a special guest in terms of our elder, Grandmaster Cam of the Shrine of Kepra, which by English interpretation means transformation. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And myself, couldn't stop. We just took a job a while ago, see.
You want to start?
Yep.
Hello, as was stated, I did arrive, so I am here. Welcome to Let's Tell It Our Way. I'm going to hand it back to RAS McPherson, who's going to give us a little bit more background about the relationship with KEMET and Khan, and then later introduce the Grandmaster.
Thanks very much, right? Speak of the angel you're here, right? And you know you're here, right? Well, first, today's presentation is most historic because I said off record to Grandmaster Khan. There are three schools of thought that are actually at play here. First, there is chematology, you know, chematology as some people call it, and misleading some people call it Egyptology, which will give character to that in a minute, right? Which is at the point where the Hyssox over to us in Kam, which is the original name, right, of what is called Egypt. Then they try to widen the whole situation, but because of the organic manner in which the history runs due course, the pharaohs that came thereafter were what they call darker, and so they weren't able to get away with this, you know, sham.
Bleaching of the
bleaching of you know? Right. And then secondly, we also want to relate to what Brother Molefe Asante, you know, one of our scholars that we've met, and who honorably is an elder of ours, and Anana, who's the first scholar to be enshrined outside of the continent, which I think is more significant. He's at, I think, Temple University, right? This is just one of his books. But in honoring him, we are honoring his school of thought called Afrocentricity, which by perfection is really Africology, as he calls it, and that it should be. Again, that word Africa, that came from the Greeks, Africanus and all of that, that needs to be explained and will be done here, right? And then thirdly, the other interplay in this presentation of myself and our elder Grandmaster is that of Rastology, which we have been here in your program, earlier as we did the black churches, where we discuss, right, all of this, right? So there are these three schools of cosmological grounds as well as scholastic thought that are going to be released here this evening. And the second thing I want to say is, in the main, we're making a quantum leap into the future via the fast. And we're making a quantum leap so far into the future that our dating predates what is before you. And by the presence of our elder, we're talking about the red and white crowned pharaohs of what you call the pre-dynastic periods, which is exactly at the point where Rasta, and in our second lecture, you know, that follows this one, we'll be expounding more fully, begins our historiography, where we are saying that King Ori, right, whether spelled O-R-I or U-R-I, is the first modern king of Kemet. And from 4470 BC, as books by J.A. Rogers, were great men of colors have shown us, the Solomonic dynasty that people previously thought was solely a Judeo-Apostolic situation can now be traced to a more ancestral past and a pharaonic past, right? And so King Ori of 447 BC is His Majesty's great grandfather. So in effect, what we're doing here this evening is what they're calling time traveling. Simple the process of using history, and as our elder will be speaking of the cosmology of KEMET that is now being practiced and now being reawakened. We are traveling through time. We are secondly also at the same time presenting our history and culture, right, that was taken away from us. Right? And this is most important, as we were saying off record before we started. The importance of your program to the people is obviously made by this lecture that is being done. Because we are making an outcry here in America for an inclusion of African-centered education, as it is called.
Yes.
And the main missing link to all of that is the part that relates to pharaonic theocracy and to the pharaonic life, yes, and of KAM. Right, which you audience will be about to get. In this instance, the word Rastafari, we stated in our second lecture, was in ancient time Ra-ta-faro, which means netters, gods of the land of life. But we in English say sons and daughters of the land of life. But netters is really the language that implies, as the elder will tell in a minute, gods. And this is who we as Ethiopians see ourselves as.
1 second, I want to urge the viewers to please get a pen and paper, because it's going to be a lot of information. It's going to be a lot of names of books and things that you're going to have to take down, and dates and things. So please get something that you can write with so you can get the information, because as you know in this program, this is information you don't get anywhere and everywhere. So
right.
Continue.
So before I hand over to my elder, and they send these, preamble statement to introduce the flow to him. But statements that are an overview of what we're about to do here, which I think is quite in order, so the audience can be prepared. Yes. Not for a usual TV feast, but something that is not given to us, and that we're asking for our children to have, and that we're asking for our people to understand, to understand that this is the missing part of our historiography, why it remains warped, that all around, unless this Kemetic part is dealt with, right, then this biblical assertion about prince and prince coming out of Egypt and Ethiopia stretching forth her hands, which really means the healing of Africa, as it is called, will not take place. Right? And in that instance, I want to say that to address the mood, which is the relationship between KHUSH and KAM, I had some, trepidation about it last night. Brother Kunun, who the audience cannot see, but is our cameraman and our host also, respectfully, and producer of this program, had said KAM before KHUSH. But as I said to Brother KAM himself, this is not a competition. We want to show clearly, and we will be doing so by showing maps of that time to show you how there is a relationship between these two places, but that there is a cartographic relationship that is not reflected in present day maps. Okay. Right? And so when we're talking about two different places, we're talking about what you presently now call Africa, but we're talking about not even a place that you call Ethiopia, which is in East Africa. And when we're talking about a place that you call Egypt. Right? These were bigger cataracts. The cataracts were more expansive, and I'll show you in a minute. So that is also another admission for our listeners to take in. There were 12 major pharaohs from what is called Ethiopia, KHUSH, that ruled KEMET. Right? And amongst them, the most important one that we'll refer to at a later stage in our lecture is one called King Yekona Amla. But in our second lecture, we do that. The reason why we say is of importance is in terms of the Judo-Apostolic life that the Western world is embellishing. It is he who restored the Solomonic dynasty after the Zagwe dynasty had ruptured it for 72 years. And so there would have been no continuum of this Judo-Apostolic thought. There would have been no fallacy, what they call Beta Israel, first Israel people leaving Ethiopia, right, to go back to Israel, which was really an attempt to reinvent some type of historical read. And when they went there, all they found out is that it's a bunch of racists. Right? They're now committing high rates of suicide. And this is not a political remark.
Right.
This is a reality, sociologically. Right? That they were going back to a place that the Ethiopian Kebenegas, the Ethiopian Bible, right, from the 3rd and the 4th century of Kinezana, had pointed out that there is a story that said that the son left that old Israel to Ethiopia, right, and would never return. So for them to have, from 1994 to 1992, in that Operation Salaman flight, that they carried over 400,000 people back to Israel, right, that was going the wrong way. You understand? That is a reinvention of history that cannot be made. Those are my opening statements as it relates to the broader frame of everything. The other part that we must mention is the role that the Roman Catholic Church plays in all of this, because the fact that it is the Greco-Roman culture, these Hissoks, that are responsible for the loss of our Kemetic collective memory. And they know they have this repository speaking about Paul and Pauline doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. They too will be mentioned, but more so in the second lecture, right? In particular at the point of the 1190 period, where Pope Alexander VI entered the mysteries of the Masonic order. 1192 it is, exactly. And at that time pretending that they were the Knight Templars. So from at that stage, our fraternal order, which is what the Kemetic practice and liberty represent, right? Kemet is our first lodge. You understand? When the lodge, when the Masons are going to Mount Moriah, they're missing the stroke, just like those people that go back. Right? And those that go to Kaaba, the Muslims I'm referring to, who with the Hissoks were earlier invaders of us, they too are missing the point. Because that very word Ka and Ba, my elder will explain to you the essence of it, that it is within us and it was there in KHUSH and KEMET. So those are my introductory statements for now that I'll make, and I'll open the floor to my grand elder, Brother Kam, to tell us of the relationship between KHUSH and Kam, right? His very name, you know, in terms of namesake, but more seriously in terms of, or what is it, posterity, or you know, that we have left out.
Yes. Well, again, welcome to all, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. Grateful for the opportunity to host. Thank you so very much. And to my brother, who I've known a long time and certainly is very, very knowledgeable, as you will continue to see. I'm here this evening as a living example that what many have considered a dead society, what many have considered a legacy that has no relevance in today's society, what many call a feel-good society, going back to something that never existed. I'm here to let all who might be interested know that this legacy is very much alive, has never died, and is continued to be practiced spiritually daily. I make that statement clearly. I make that statement because spirit is real. It is not make-believe. And for those who have, and again, we speak of no group in specific, but all who would place themselves for their own actions, retribution is what it is. I speak as a priest. I'm guided by spirit. I have said to all, I'm not a historian. Yet, my ancestral memory is clear.
Yes.
The things that I speak of can be documented. The things that we choose to speak of this evening, we will go through categorically for your understanding. Understand that spirituality did not begin with a culture outside of Africa coming in to explain to some misguided people what spirit was. Spirituality was a state of consciousness, later divided into areas for political reasons. Our spirituality transcends borderlines, understanding that the spiritual aspects of what is called KHUSH and KAM, and at this point I might mention my name, KAM, is not arbitrary. KAM literally means black or black earth or essence of black. And I like all to know I was born with the name black. So KAM for me is not arbitrary, but I understand that it is as it needs to be. So in our travels back, let us understand that KEMET and KHUSH and the areas of Africa were a united land spiritually. We were not divided. It was later demographics that divided the land. And so as we continue to speak and as it is established, please listen and follow as it's established categorically for your understanding. I thank you.
Thank you, Brother. And we're further going to look at a geographical map of the
Yeah, to show
the
right the oneness and unity that existed in the past. Now, this is a map that we first say it's called the Ethiopian Empire before the unification of the two lands, right? And this is coming from the destruction of black civilization by Chancellor Williams. Unfortunately, we don't have the cover, right? By Chancellor Williams. What Brother Kunun could do is to focus, and then what I'll try to do is.
He's good.
How we did? Okay. Right. Now, as you can see in the northern section, what we would normally call Palestine, the Middle East, and those places were referred to as northern Ethiopia, upper Egypt, right? Up until after. And in the lower section, which some would want to relegate it to this Sudan, right? It was called Nuba, Tarseti, right? Which is
Tarseti,
right? Right, we have to get the correct.
Tarseti.
Right, Tarseti, right? And could you spell it in there?
It would be T-A-S-E-T-I, Tarseti.
Right, right. But many people have since then relegated it to Sudan. In fact, we have a news piece here of a recent find down in Sudan. Ancient cities unearthed in Sudan. So as we are talking and finding out these things, the history is unfolding before us. In fact, today they found an unearthed cultural property pertaining to Nefertiti, which our elder can speak on that in a minute. And over the weekend, they found a gold mine in Ethiopia that has just burst out. You understand? So the very two places that we're talking about today, you understand?
Coming out.
Are themselves manifolding themselves, right, before the public and our people, as it ought to be. So further south would have Axum. Now Axum can be said to be one of the name of Ethiopia. But as you also note, over here will be the Red Sea, you have Yemen over here, and these empires stretch as far as over here in the east and stretch as far as to down here. In fact, as I will tell you in another book of ours called Introduction to African Civilization by John G. Jackson, he traces it way down into Asia, where the Indians, what we call the Dravidians, right, are identified, right, as looking as us, Kamatic, as I said, black, right? I hate to use this word black because it's an adjective, and an adjective cannot really describe a people. It's only a noun. This is why we are coming forth these names KHUSH, Nuba, right? Because these were the original names.
And descriptive, by the way.
Right, and descriptive.
Right.
Meaning, as elders saying, they have an etymological meaning
That's
and an epistemological trust within
It had an energy.
an energy within them.
That's correct.
Right. But to further introduce the whole subject, and I want to pick up on a point that Granelda said a while ago about the people who have purposely, Mama, this whole thing, if I could use a Jamaican colloquial term, is that my presentation, even I said opening remarks about what it represents, has to be, as an historian, critique, open public critique, and some of these books that purport themselves to be Afrocentric and purport themselves to be Pharaonic and Kemetic inclined. So I want to say that my lecture here is saluting the works of Dr. Muata Habe Ashby, who has been doing wonderful work in the series of works that he has been releasing. And in part, a book of his called The Cycles of Time, Mystic Origins and Destiny of the Soul, otherwise called The History of Creation and the Mystical Journey of the Soul. Because in effect what we are talking about here is the history of creation. In effect what we are talking about here is the mystical journey of our soul, as elders spoke about the spirit, right? And then again, you know?
I need to point out one thing. As we speak of the Pharaonic time period, we must understand that that was a small time period.
Yes.
Spirituality predated that time period and is still in existence after that time period.
True.
We like to think of that time period as a popular time period, and so many will call the Pharaonic times or the times of the pharaohs, which was really not even our expression either, but it is a time period. So we must understand that spirituality predated that time period and has survived to today.
And this is why
of the pejorative terms that come across.
Yes.
Right, and this is why I spoke earlier about the using terms like pre-dynastic, and why I spoke about the red and white form pharaohs.
That's good.
Because that's the furthest point that we can go forward to. I mean, in biblical terms of Judo-Apostolic language, you would say it's the ancient of days. You understand? Or it's the first without laugh, you know? Laugh, or as we would say in the Sword of Solomon, that he's the birthless one. Right? You see what I'm saying? Without mother, without father, right? Like we say in that Judo-Apostolic sense, that he's the Melchizedek of that time, without mother, without father, right? So this is what our lecture is presenting. It's presenting ourselves in the deepest perennial past, right? And the cycles of ourselves coming with these different names, as Ella said, that carry different meaning as we move to different geographical landscape, and as a culture, as a nation, as a people. You know, we found ourselves doing different things nationally. So my book has to salute Brother Ashby and this work, and in particular from chapter 4 there's a section called The Ancient Egyptian Origins of Modern Religions, right, which can be found on pages 95 to 135, and in a subsection called Judaism in Ethiopia, which can be found on pages 132 to 133. He states that Judaism in Ethiopia is pre-Christian, right, meaning that 100 to 500 ACE, as you were saying. Right, we have the Falashiti I referred to, right? There was Christianity in Ethiopia 188 years before Constantinople came up with this fantastic myth about Christianity and trick, right?
And I just want to interject here, because we're running out of time, we're running short on time, we have a couple minutes. As some of our viewers probably may be familiar, others of our viewers may not be familiar with some of the books and some of the, or some of the introductory information. Is there something you can give them, those who are just finding out, who are just coming into the light, so to speak, in terms of what we're discussing, and is there introductory information? Where can they find it? Where should they go?
Well, I would recommend 2 books, even as I've done for this lecture, because we have a whole library, but we especially choose these because they, by the very subject and chapter headings, tell us clearly where we are traveling to, right? So the first book, as I stated, would be Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. The second one would be John G. Jackson's Introduction to African Civilization. The third one, in terms of having a catalog of the fears themselves, would simply be a book like this, Molecular Sample, which this is a good reader for children and for adults, because it's clearly written without any footnotes, and it's not an academic text. Right? But these are the type of things we need, because some of the names that we use in English, right, the efficacy of those words, of those praise words on these people, are not felt and can't be known without the right names being called. So this is a book that does that.
Right.
How many minutes were there?
One. One minute. And I know we want to, any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Yes, I'd just like to add and chime in that in our approach to spirituality again, let us understand that it has not died, that it is very real. Understand that wherever your spiritual approach is now, it has roots in spirituality that we currently follow. Whatever your discipline is, we are not to denounce anyone's discipline, but whatever your discipline is, understand that it has roots that can be traced back to Africa.
And I would finally say that the Eurocentric separation of KHUSH from KEMET is a very dangerous element that has taken away the collective memory of the people. And so we have done good to present the converse, and in the second half we present some more to our people.
Okay. Let's spell it out. Hi, my name is Raymond Johnson, and welcome to Let's Tell It Our Way. We have another exciting episode. If you were here the last time, we started talking about the relationship between KHUSH and KAM, and RAS McPherson,
yes,
and Grandmaster KAM were able to give us a little understanding about that relationship. And I know the Grandmaster also really emphasized the fact that spirituality is something that's always been here. It predates the Pharaoh times and still exists today. And though many may believe that it does not exist, it truly does. And we're going to try to fill a lot of time. We're going to get a lot of information in this time. Get your pencils and papers out. Get ready to get involved in a very deep discussion on the relationship between KHUSH and KAM, and definitely moving that into the Rastafarians as well. So, Rastafarians.
Right. Now, in the last session, we had hailed Brother Ashby, because we want to go a bit further to hail Brother Ashby, because he says something that is most important to where we are going now. He says in the subsection of his book called Cycles of Time, a subsection on pages 133 to 135 called Rastafarianism and the Judeo-Christian religion. He says Rastafarianism is an effort to establish a positive connection to the Bible, as well as an attempt to provide a vision for the liberation of African peoples in the diaspora. However, as with other traditions, we seek to isolate the teaching as exclusive. Rastafarianism cannot be practiced by everyone, since, like Judaism, it is strongly tied with a particular culture. Culture-based religions tend to exclude other cultures and point of view, fomenting unrest and divisiveness between peoples of different backgrounds. He goes on to say, because he's from the yoga school, I thought all religion needs to incorporate yoga mysticism, and in so doing, a practitioner will be able to rise above cultural differences and thereby truly become a source for uplifting all people, regardless of their religion or ethnicity. This is why yoga can help our religion. Now, it sounds a bit contradictory to me, because he's doing, in the end, what he says culture-based religion does, because yoga has a culture base within it, in terms of the Oriental, and in our earlier first section we spoke about the Asiatic influence and the Germans, right? And also I want to correct him, because my good brethren have known him, but this is writing, and I've heard him already, but I'm supposed to be able to critique him, right? The Rastafari faith is a culture-based, it's a culture, and is a religion to the extent that the word re and religion means tying ones to one origin. Not a church going affair or simply a clap and a killing of an edifice and say, well, then you have a religion, or because you give dues or something like that. go through some ritualistic, liturgy. Yeah, that thought is not religion. What we are doing here represents our religion. Right? What we are doing here represents our theistic ideology, where these were the ideas that the culture had. And the culture has a mind, Right?
To reconnect ourselves.
To reconnect ourselves to the past. Now, having said that, we have to critique another work by Namin Abar, Light from Ancient Africa. And he's very outrageous. He says, in a chapter 4 called The Myth of Asar and Black Awakening, he said, then said propose, let's try to thoroughly disrupt the commonality. Let's divide the people politically. Set began to mix them up in all kinds of strange camps. Let's make some of them Rastafari. It doesn't even spell the word properly. It's R-A-S-T-A-F-R-A-I. It's a beautiful book because it deals with the psychology from KEMET. The Sahu and the Sa, which all elder can speak on that in a minute, as you could speak about the barn, the car. You understand? The soul and the spirit, right? But then this is foul play. He said, let's make some of them nationalists, some of them socialists. Let's get them very confused about who they are and let them believe that their members is what they really are. Set was determined to mutilate Asar, right? So that he would begin to lose sight of his natural unity, which this is the operative word, natural unity and common objectives. Yeah, so this question of natural unity is the operative word in my quotation.
Right.
It's not this to have a list of people who are for Rasta and who are against Rasta.
Right.
But if you don't say the truth and it's not scientific, we cannot accept it. It's not a sentiment first. You understand?
Yes.
The national unity which our elders spoke of regard about is the key. And this is how we are presenting our presentation. We came on your earlier program, we said that Rastology, among the 10 definitions that I give, is the total study of a people. Right. So if this represents us and our nation, there can be no disunity in it, or is there anyone trying to be divisive, as he's implying. Now, having got over all of that, my last comment in the last show emanated from Miriam Mahat Ray Monges, KHUSH, the jewel of Nubia, reconnecting the root system of African civilization. And she noted that in the latter dynasties, in particular from pardon my pronunciation, Pianki, and Tarak and the others that came after, that came from KHUSH and were the known Ethiopian kings, that there is a level of ethnocentrism that came up from the white school of thought, who were before trying to say that the earlier kings were white, or Neolithic, or whatever the name, Semitic, or whatever the name they give it, right? These are these pseudo-scientific terms that they're trying to use to divide us and to divide the land. And it is her point that I, passed back on a while ago to say that the Eurocentric separation of KHUSH from KEMET, right, prevented this holistic approach that we are presenting, and that our people need to have, right? Now, having said that, I referred earlier to John Jackson's Introduction to African Civilization. And there's a section in it called Chapter 2, Ethiopia and the Origins of Civilization. Again, it touches upon what we're doing. That can be found on pages 60 to 92. In Chapter 3, there's a chapter called Egypt and the Evolution of Civilization. Again, this is what we're doing. Right. But more in particular, he speaks of, on page 65, about ancient and modern scholars that have come to the conclusion that the world's first civilization was created by a people known as the Ethiopians. Right? The name Ethiopians we owe to the ancient Greeks. When the Greek came in contact with the dusky inhabitants, which is what they call us, of Africa and Asia, they call them the burnt faces. The Greek word for burnt was ethos, and the word for face was ox. So developed their dark complexion, because, this is the operative part, because they were closer to the sun. Right? My elder will explain that, as he said, his very name, Cam, black, right, is operative. Right? I said, no, coincident that he is a Kemetic priest. You understand? Now, this moves us now to the Rasta connection, and I want to do so by quoting from a work of ours called The Role of the Revolutionary Ethiopianist Intellectual. It's a lecture that I gave to the Kemetic and Scholastic Lodge that is here in America called ASCA, right? And I did this in 91, 92, right? I presented this paper, and there's a subsection called the Kemetic and Ethiopia Unconquerable Atomic Power Connection. I'll just read a little from it because it tells of this connection, and it tells of what Brother Kunun was saying, Grandmaster will be about to explain about the cosmology itself, meaning Asar, Aset, Heru, what you call Osiris, Isis, right, and Heru.
Yes. Well, they would say Horus.
Horus, right, and Horus. They would say Horus. Right, but we have incorporated that. Okay. And the reason why we did is that realize that the people were not so much embellishing the Judah apostolic line. We were trying to make an outreach to show them that the Rasta community has these practices as a part of its historical and theology. So we said then, together we represent the cultural vanguard of our peoples, nation, present the exile in the Americas and throughout the four quarters of the earth. As educators and activists, we are the most current subjects and final hope of our nation, Ethiopia. And for us, the word Ethiopia and the Ethiopians, original meaning is a reference to the whole of Africa and beyond to its former boundaries. And for us, Ethiopians refer to the first children of the Almighty Creator, the first netters, as I was saying before. Right? And this can be found in a book called by Reverend Dr. R. Swinburne Clymer, called The Mysteries of Osiris, or Ancient Egyptian Initiation, which was written way back in 1908. Right? To continue, let us then debunk the Greco-Roman ethnocentric so-called etymological interpretation of Ethiopia as burnt faces. Our slight epistemological digression here demonstrates the core task of decodifying a Euro-Western American ethnocentric field lexion and symbology. The question of our means of recodification represents one of the main resulting impacts in the cultural clash between our ancestors, us, and the contending Western scholarship and sociology that fragmented us totally. The truth, however, and this is the cosmological part of it, the truth, however, is that slavery created a trajectory path that is similar to the essence of ancient Kemetic cosmology. For we are the dismembered fragments of our father, Osiris, which is Asar, scattered all over the world, whose mother, Aset, Isis, meaning the spirit of Africa, Ethiopia, has been regathering us, and has regathered us, right? Heru, Horus, right? The children of this union here gathered. Right? Now I can stop at that point, right? Because the rest relates to what I call the cultural maze that white people find themselves in when they try to deal with what I call the spiritual technology. And I'll invite my elder to speak about the cosmology.
Yes, I thank you for that. Because it's very important that we understand a few terms. When we use the word religion, we must understand that even in that we're giving energy to something religio, which means to tie back.
Yes.
We must understand the distinction between religion and spirituality. So you'll hear me emphasize spirituality. When we go to the stories, the allegories of our ancestors, we understand that they were mirrors for us to use today. So we put the proper energy to it. Now they will say Horus, and they will say Osiris, and they will say Isis, and that's putting energy to that culture, to the Greek culture. But in fact, it was Asar, it was Ast or Aset, and Heru. But the fragmentation of Asar indeed had a figurative energy that we can use today. Yes, it was a fragmentation, but there is a fragmentation rather, but there is it's not an accident that these pieces are coming together and being regathered.
Yes.
That is not an accident. So when we understand that you're not merely reading a history, Yet you're reading a guideline to live by the principles. And those principles, 42 in specific, but many more, is how we guide our lives. You see? So our spirituality was not based on just feel-good stories, as some would like to infer that this is what it was. But it was guidelines for our daily living. So it's not something that we go on Saturday or Sunday or any other day, but we live daily by the principles involved. So all of the allegories that we would read concerning Kemet and in our sacred books, and by the way, respect to many sacred books, but the Bible, as we know it today, was not the only sacred book, and certainly not the earliest sacred book. So we must understand that sacred writings were contained in earlier cultures than those who later came and expounded their culture. So I want to emphasize that when we take a look at spirituality, let us not confuse that with religion, to say, I am this or I am that, and so therefore be divided. Our spirituality was united. Our philosophy spiritually was united, and that's what we must emphasize. Those are the guidelines that we use today, and the particular disciplines that we might use today to live by those principles are certainly to be applauded, not to be condemned. That's the point that I really want to make with that.
For some of our viewers who are not familiar, but you know they're hearing words and they remember from whatever they had in school in terms of Greek mythology, and they're hearing Osiris. That sounds familiar, but they're hearing Osar. They're not familiar in Isis and Horus and Heru and Set. You know,
but all of that, yes, all of that is not an accident.
Mm-hmm.
It's to bring you to a stopping point of Greece as the cradle of civilization.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that could not be the cradle of civilization because they got it from someplace.
Right.
So it certainly could not be the cradle, but it's for that purpose, to bring you to a stopping point to a certain group of people. So when we understand that if this sounds new to you, if it sounds foreign to you, it's not an accident. But please understand that as you see me, I live this daily, but I did not make this up. It does not belong to me. There are people living like myself who are priests as I am, who live this daily. The instructions are available. You can find it. I'm the chief priest of the Shrine of Khepra. I'm in Brooklyn. There are many, my elders that I learned from, certainly Baba Haru from the Shrine of Ptah, and Hadi Khafra of the Shrine of Amun-Ra, and many of the shrines that are in existence today, living this daily. So if there's more information that you desire, please contact our host and he'll get you the information. I don't advertise. Those who find me is because Spirit has guided you to me. Thank you.
Right. No, it's most interesting that Elder said that, because I spoke about the spiritual technology, as I call it, right?
Yes.
And that the religion, we use the word spiritual technology. I want to understand how we,
Right.
I have those school of thought. But it's right here that the Eurocentric people were caught in a cultural maze by trying to block out, you understand, the earlier part. And this is why I'm saying I took a slight digression etymologically and epistemologically, which is what we are doing here. Now the other thing I want to say, having done that, is that you were asked about sources. There's a book by John G. Jackson called Christianity Before Christ, Ethiopian Origins of Civilizations, Pagan Origins of the Christ Myth, which is what we are touching upon. But most of all, we want to question actually our mood and what we have been doing in the last hour almost, is in the historiographic school of thought called the questioning of the theory of Ethiopian origin of civilization. There's a whole school of thought in history and historiography and that. And this whole theory of the Ethiopian origin of civilization has been discussed by many scholars, both ancient and modern, because this is where people sit down to try to come to where is the cradle of civilization. And in so doing, in the last 5 years, there has been 10 major finds that prove that it is in Ethiopia, you know, and specifically in Ethiopia. KEMET, and like the one I showed a while ago, down in Nuba, right? But specifically the oldest stone was found in Ethiopia, specifically more recently, I think this year, 4 months ago, an Ethiopian archaeologist, you know, found something that is carrying us further and further to answer this question of the theory of the origin of civilization. In this instance, Wallace Budge, History of Ethiopia, is another source that our listenership and viewership can, you know, relate to. And he was the person that began to use the word KHUSH. But he said that large number of Orientals and Europeans begin to use the word Abyssinian instead of KHUSH, right? Which is now Nubia, right, as we have stated a while ago. And then also want to note that KHUSH and Abyssinian comes from a translation of the Ethiopic version of the Bible in the 5th and 6th century. So for us in modern time, there is a root, right, as I said, that predates Greco-Roman time, because 188 years King Azana of Ethiopia was already practicing, you know, this Ethiopic type Christianity before they conquered this myth. And also we want to note on page 67 of Budge's book, he said that therefore Ethiopians spoken of by Greeks were not Abyssinians at all, but the natives of Upper Nubia and the island of Miro, I don't know if my pronunciation is right, and the peoples of southern Abyssinia to the equator, as I showed in the map a while ago, the southern section, right? And we have hieroglyphic, what you call, again, these words, sacred writings.
Yes, metanetter.
Right, metanetter, right, which is this book, or this another source that people can refer to, right, the metanetter by Jacob H. Caratu, right, that has a number of our top scholars, people like Obemba, Theophilus, and others, you know, that are inside of this book, right, refers to. And these inscriptions between the 6th, 12th, and 18th dynasties prove that caravans traveled from Egypt to the countries about the Blue Nile and to the region much further to the south, but there is no mention in them of any country which can be identified with Abyssinian proper, meaning that at that earlier time of these scholars, they were having a problem. But since we are having no modern finds, we are getting this problem solved. And as I'm saying, the theory of the Ethiopian origin of civilization is closer to an answer, that we can definitively say that it began in what we geographically call now Ethiopia. So KEMET is KHUSH's oldest daughter, which is what Chancellor Williams says, and that is right. And I'm saying that it is so by cosmic and natural inundation. But the Khan's name, you understand, is just an outpouring of
so that's why we say KHUSH to Khan.
From KHUSH to Khan. Right, you see, because the Gyan referred to in the Bible is the same Lake Tana. Right, and the same Lake Tana is the same Abashai River, which what you call White Nile, Blue Nile, Ganges. Right? But all of it starts in a little pool of water in Ethiopia called Lake Tana, which in the Bible is referred to as Gyan. So in effect, what I'm saying, as I said before, that Egypt's first golden age was initiated by an invasion from Ethiopia, in part of the 3rd dynasty. And many entirely new ideas entered the country since then. That golden age ended in 4163 BC, and thereafter we have to mention the invasion of the Asiatic nomads, called the Shepherd Kings as they call themselves, right? Hyksos, right? H-Y-K-O-S? Hyksos, right? That's the function in the elders, who captured Thebes, right? And dominated Kemet from the 15th to 17th dynasties, in effect, for 150 years. From 1709 BC, the Hyksos were driven out of Kemet into the Sinai Desert, North Sinai Desert, because this is where this Judaism thing is going to formulate itself. Right? And so by the 18th dynasty, there was a new kingdom started and a new golden age in the Nile Valley, right? That began with Thutmose I in 1662 to 1628. This imperial power reached its zenith and in Amenhotep III, between 1538 to 1501 BC, Kemet stretched to Punt, right, or the Kushites of Nuda, to where we call Amagidia. In fact, Tutmos III that we were talking off camera about Elder,
Yes.
is the person who fought that battle.
That's correct.
In Megiddo, right?
right.
And I must mention that one of the obelisks that is in Central Park, yeah, actually came from Kemet, and it's from the reign of Tutmos. There were actually some more here. Let me get this straight. There were actually some more. There were actually Tutmos was not only a great soldier, but a great builder of the famous Hall of Columns that Karnak testifies. He set up a single obelisk and 2 piers, right, of 3 obelisks at Karnak and 2 obelisks at Heliopolis, right?
Heliopolis.
Yeah, Heliopolis.
Heliopolis. Which is owned, by the way.
Right.
Or the City of the Sun.
Right, the City of the Sun it's called,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But no obelisk of his remains now at either place. So none of those 5. And we have identified those 5 to be in France, Germany, America, and Rome.
Okay.
And one in England.
By the way, inadvertently, they spread the energy, not intentionally,
Yes.
but inadvertently, they spread the energy. Because I believe if they really knew that they were spreading it, they would have left them.
Left them right where they were.
All right.
And it also brought their own demise, because all of them were world powers at some point. You know, I mean, France with the French Revolution, Germany with Hitler and his Nazism, and, you know,
we must understand that the
England,
energy,
that's the sun will never,
the energy is very, very real. You must be careful what you bring to yourself.
True.
And because you never know if you actually have the ability to harness that and work with it.
And that's the point.
Once again, we find ourselves closing and having no time, having very little time. So, once again, I want to thank the brothers for being here. It is always an education for me, as I hope it is for our viewers. And I just like both the Grandmaster and Ross McPherson the closing statement for our viewers to be, someday to
But before I do so, we might have to do a third one.
yeah. No, they will definitely be
quite seriously. And I might have, if Wellmaster is up for it, to do an extra time.
Well, it's what I do daily.
Right, 26 minutes
yes.
more, right there.
It's what I do daily.
Because I want to get over the Rasta section clearly. And then what happened, because we haven't made the transition.
Okay.
You see, but what is happening?
So we definitely have to finish.
Right, it's a natural progression, right? But what I want to say to close the section is that having established that there is this connection between Kemet and Ethiopia, the Rasta section should not be hard to see. And so King Solomon and his son Ben Melech, who renews that Judah apostolic line, but who represent the 225th king, including the 9 Pharaohs I told you that came from Ethiopia, who are known as the Ethiopian kings, right? That
we're done. All right, come back again because we are not finished.
There's one more shot, but I'm going to close out the Kemet thing now and go straight into the Rasta part of it, right? Yeah.
We got more tape? We got more tape?